my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my video. I know I say that at the beginning of every video, but it still thrills me to think about people watching and using these videos, and I am delighted. If this is the first time, or maybe you've seen these many times, I'm delighted just the same to share this video with you. Questions from comments. A new segment. This is questions from comments 7. I'm told some people that these topics were going to be covered in questions from comments 6. I'm sorry about that. That was a different set of subjects and topics. Specifically, we're going to talk about vibrato and upper register resonance. So without further ado, thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. And if you haven't yet, I hope you'll do so now. There are a variety of ways that you can support my channel, and those you can find in the description. They include Patreon, where you can get MP3s and performance notes or practice notes, as well as my PDF guides. It's not music, but it's just a PDF guide that can help you follow along with the videos and things. That's all in the description. So to get started, very, very popular topic here. Probably could say more of it on the channel, but let's take care of that now. Thank you, Jeff. More great information. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm getting first-class teaching at the cost of a few minutes of my commute. Word to the wise, on your commute, if you are driving yourself, 2 hands on the wheel, stay focused. Listening is one thing, singing along is another, so be careful. What a gift. Thank you. I'm wondering if you have or would be willing to tackle the issue of vibrato in greater depth. For example, the different forms, healthy versus unhealthy. Specifically, in my case, how to go from a caprino, fast, not so pretty goat's wiggle, to the more relaxed and pleasing type. Vibrato, like so many things in vocal studies, can be a bit of a contentious subject matter. There are certainly exercises out there. You will not mostly find them on my channel because mostly they circumvent the actual process of developing a vibrato. That, if I may, is related to this here. Vibrato, resulting from nerve impulse and coordinated muscular equilibrium, is a natural ingredient of vocal timbre unless it is purposely eliminated in order to meet the criteria of certain cultural aesthetics or stylistic considerations. In other words, in the practice of developing a good appoggio practice, airflow engagement, in the practice of aligning your vowels so that you get even response, in the practice of putting these things together so that they work in a coordinated fashion to support your tonal onsets and good phrasing and all those things, your vibrato will emerge out of that practice. That being said, sometimes it doesn't. And that can, on one hand, reveal that there are discrepancies. Either your airflow is not commensurate to the range that you're singing in, or perhaps you're squeezing too much and you're using too much force against the vocal fold. Different imbalances result in different affectations with the vibrato. So, for example, if you had not quite enough vocal fold adduction or closure, and you're using too much air, you tend to get this kind of wobbly sort of vibrato, where it's just kind of rattling around in there. Equally, I also did a lot of diaphragmatic pulsing to make that happen. So in the vocalist that has the idea that the vibrato is coming from a pulsing at the rectus abdominis muscles or things like that, you'll also get that kind of loose wobble. Now, I am exaggerating a bit here, so it probably doesn't sound exactly like that if that's what's happening. But you can evaluate these aspects of your singing and then find out whether or not they might be playing a part in creating your vibrato sound. Also, you'll notice that the vibrato has a certain disconnection to the next note of the phrase when those things are happening. So for example, if I were singing a scale, it's really, really disjointed. You don't get a very seamless phrase when you have that level of pitch fluctuation in the vibrato, that much wobble. Granted, too, it's the slackness in the vocal fold and a little bit too much air being allowed to pass over them. On the other end of the spectrum, there's a hyperactive sort of activity where you've got too much vocal fold engagement and you can get this sort of kind of wiggle, which I think the person who wrote this comment in is referring to. I must admit, it's harder for me to demonstrate this one. But when you do this, you'll get a very shallow, very fast kind of wiggle. It's almost like a billy goat gruff. Now, I don't think that the person who wrote this comment in sounds like that. Again, I am exaggerating in the hopes that you will hear the different effects. In that particular iteration, I'm squeezing a lot here. I'm also squeezing a lot here just to force air over the vocal fold, and that results in that fast, shallow wiggle. So more important than any of this is how do we develop a pleasant vibrato? Now, first and foremost, the word pleasant is, of course, subjective. What's pleasant to you may not be pleasant to me, and may in turn be not pleasant or may be pleasant to a third individual in the equation. Part of this does come down to artistic interpretation, what you as an artist are trying to evoke in your music, and perhaps also those people that you are working with. You'll recall here in the book, it said artistic considerations are sometimes used to justify changes or different ways of using the vibrato. And specifically, what he's kind of alluding to at that point is the use of straight tone. And while straight tone is not indicative of balanced vocal function, it can be used to break old habits and start something new. So for example, in the question of this vocalist who's got this very, very fast and presumably shallow vibrato, you might try doing and you can hear I'm trying to hold my voice from the vibrato, but it's kind of wiggling a little bit. That can help make you aware of the structures that are working, and you might perceive a little bit of that wiggle, and that wiggle you can kind of encourage. And a way to work on this is by changing vowels, by holding the same pitch. Kind of like what I just did right there. And case in point, what you will find in a lot of different places on my channel. So when you ask about specific exercises that are for vibrato, I usually hide them at the ends of the videos after I've given you loads and loads and loads of different vowel alignment and airflow alignment exercises. The hope here is that after you've had 10 minutes of after you've been doing that for a while and you are very much in your body and you're very much warmed up, and I've kind of cultivated the exercises in the hopes that if you've sung along and you're listening carefully for vowel alignment and you're monitoring your usage of your body, you're getting pretty good balance of tone production. Then at the very end, I'll slip in a really slow exercise or a messa di voce exercise. So the messa di voce exercises, this is also like the singing with chords videos where you've got pardon my wrong note there, where you've got those long held tones and then you switch a vowel. Those are all ways assuming good appoggio practice, assuming good vowel alignment, to sort of tempt fate into allowing the vibrato to emerge. That's the idea. That's the idea. And that's why I don't have a ton of videos that are specifically on vibrato production. Because vibrato typically comes out of a well-balanced voice. If your voice isn't balancing for you, or you've got one of the vibrato things that I showed earlier where it's either wobbly and loose, or it's a billy goat kind of a thing, then try a little, emphasis on the word little, bit of straight tone, and notice the differences. Notice what you feel differently in the oral cavity. Notice what you might feel differently at the vocal fold. Notice how you're holding your engagement, your appoggio practice. See if you can notice any differences, and then try to integrate some of those differences into your normal practice. With practice, with observation, this can help bring your voice into a more balanced mode of phonation, more balanced singing, and this can help you produce a more balanced vibrato that has, I think balanced is generally between 6 to 8 permutations per second. Less than that starts to tempt that wobble. More than that starts to be somewhat billy goat-like. And that in either of those extremes can indicate some type of imbalance. Again, this is all assuming that you're looking for a middle ground, that you're looking for balanced phonation and a balanced moderate vibrato, as the person who wrote in the comment suggested. If you're looking for those affectations, then you can explore them by changing those elements too. So you want a wider, kind of lugubrious, somewhat humorous vibrato, then try putting a little bit more airflow over the vocal fold, but slackening up the tension. Try to release some of that tension, or maybe even go for a bit of abduction or separation of the vocal fold to get it rolling. You can also encourage it by thinking of it more as a fluctuation in pitch and consciously changing those pitches up and down. That's not vibrato, and that will not necessarily lead you to a productive vibrato. But in the interest of exploring different affectations, it might be worth your time. Next. Hey Jeff, a never-ending education on your channel. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm wondering why, as I go higher in pitch, the resonance wants to fall further back, losing the bright and buzzy tone and feeling for a more breathy, weak tone and uncomfortable, tiring sensation. What's the secret to keeping it all up front throughout my range? There are two things at play here. The breathiness is a clue into what's happening with your vocal fold. If your voice, as you ascend, is getting a little bit breathy, then the vocal fold is abducting or separating. This is not uncommon. The fix, however, takes a little bit of practice and discipline. So for example, let's just say this is what's happening. You can hear the air seeping over the vocal fold. And when I do that, I'm engaging a little bit to keep my vocal folds a little bit more static, and this keeps it from meeting as nicely as it could, as efficiently as it could. Assuming good appoggio practice, in other words, your airflow and engagement are well practiced and they are serving you well, and assuming that you've been practicing vowel modifications, then step one is to try to get the vocal fold to remain adducted or closed, would be the common parlance. In the beginning stages of this, to avoid squeezing the notes out, I would advise you to allow the sound to be kind of goofy. And you may also want to start on the top with some shorter notes. So instead of doing all those melismatic scales, you, That doesn't match at all on the bottom, right? You. Yet, what's absent at the top, you, is airiness. You. It doesn't sound like the bottom. But one of the things is it's not airy, and that tells us that the vocal fold is remaining adducted. What I am doing here is creating the opportunity for the vocal fold to remain adducted, but also elongate so that I get over my secondo passaggio. And in this case, I'm like right at it or only slightly above it on F sharp. Elongation of the vocal fold while retaining the closure of it paves the way to match resonances. So we start with that. You. To break the old habits of our ascending scale patterns, we have to start from the top, go down, and come back up, as I just did. You. Once we can do that, we can start doing scales. You can still hear how kind of hollow or goofy it sounds, right? This is an insurance policy to make sure that the vocal fold remains adducted. Now, one of my favorite exercises to start the process, and really to work on the alignment of sound across the secondo passaggio is the NG exercise. This will also have the effect of helping with the resonance in your voice. So when we do the NG exercise, assuming now we can go up and down and do a bunch of different things with our voice across the secondo passaggio, then I can sing It's very, very buzzy. It does not sound pleasant. It sounds quite unpleasant, although I must admit I've been doing it for such a long time now that it has a sort of warm familiarity in my ear when I do that exercise, because I know what's coming next, right? So if I do this, and there's more to your question still that we haven't gotten to, but when you go across the secondo passaggio with that buzzy sound, it really, to me, feels like it comes forward. Now, feelings and descriptions of physical experiences are subjective. It might not feel that way to you, but what you want to listen for is the brilliance in the tone production. We want it to stay the same. And that way, before I go on, if it's changing, it can change like this. There it's fallen too far back. Or, also very common, there the vocal folds have separated. And all of a sudden a load of air is billowing over them and coming out my nose. FYI, all the sound is coming out my nose right now. It's all being gone through the mask, through the sinus passages, whatever you want to call it, through the nasal pharynx. It's all coming that way. And we are gauging the resonance using that resonator, that resonance space, to figure it out. But what we're really doing here is balancing out phonation at the vocal fold. Make no doubts about it. That's what's at play here, is how the vocal fold is adducting, whether it's adducting efficiently or it's beginning to separate. Anyway, observations and practices having been done, and pardon my phlegminess today, obviously I need to drink more water and probably talk a bit less or take water breaks while I'm doing these videos. But anyways, when you've released to those vowels, then you'll get more of a balanced tone production above the secondo passaggio, and then you can come back down through it. Now, the smoothness comes with practice, but that is how to address resonance across the secondo passaggio, to work on it, to practice it, to revisit it regularly. Additionally, when it comes to resonance in the upper register of our voices, I think there is a somewhat less quantifiable thing to think about, which is that, at least for me, for such a long time, I was told to keep the sound back, to keep the sound on the body, on the throat, things like that, that I wasn't able to immediately connect the resonance across because of the physical sensation of it lifting off. And this is to be differentiated from when the vocal folds separate and you get that airier, falsetto-y tone production. And I think that that one of the key components, the question was, what's the secret to matching resonances across the secundo passaggio in the upper register? Giving yourself permission to feel that lift off. So much of learning to match the resonances across these transitions in our voices, and again, I'm talking for myself here, so this could be irrelevant, but is allowing oneself to feel okay about these shifts in the way that it feels. Because at least to me, if I wanted it to sound the same, then it should feel the same. If I want it to sound the same, then I should have the physical sensation that the resonant focus of the sound is in the same spot. And yet, that generally doesn't produce the result of the consistency of tone quality. These physical sensations have to be allowed to shift and move around. These are the micro adjustments that we make that in fact allow the voice to retain its resonance across the different transitions. And when we think about it like that, it's not really that we're retaining it. It's not that it's staying the same. The sound quality is remaining consistent, but we're doing it by adjusting it in very small ways all along the way, and this results in a consistency of tone. So it's almost as if we need like a different way of talking about it, because the words themselves are kind of deceiving. Making a smooth transition, maintaining resonance across the secundo passaggio is about micro adjustments to phonation. It is not about holding it stable in one static position. That typically results in mismatched resonances or vocal strain on the worse end of things. So it's about the micro adjustments. As always, I hope this helps. Great questions. Keep them coming. I love it. My name is Jeff. Take really good care of your voices, enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.